there can still be some sort of
sorry to interrupt, Ashley, but then
someone's video is running like
it's clearly a troll, so we should like try to get rid of Alicia. Can the host remove Alicia, please?
Yeah. Remove. Okay. Okay, is everything better now? Like, is everything fine?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, I can't see. I'm not on gallery view. I'm in gallery. I'm not on gallery view. That's why I can't see what was happening. My apologies. Okay, so we're going to begin, but without streaming because there's that's giving some trouble. So what I'm going to do is I'm recording this session. That way we can be able to email it to folks who were unable to make it via Zoom. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here this evening for this webinar, which is actually the final webinar in the series Carnival, Sustainability, Equity. And today we'll be talking about the affordability of period products and sustainable menstruation in Trinidad and Tobago. This series is made possible by Carnival, Elevate, Helping Her Foundation, the Carnival Platform, the Lily Pads Project, and Feminine Caribbean. It is my honor as a moderator for today's conversation to introduce you to our panelists and presenters, Shalini Bahadur of Feminine Caribbean, Celeste Simpson of Helping Her Foundation, Lorena Ramparan of the Down Syndrome Family Network, and Amy Lee Baksh of the Lily Pads Project. So I'd like to invite Celeste Simpson from Helping Her. Celeste is the Vice President of Helping Her Foundation since 2018. So the floor is yours, Celeste, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
All right, so let me start sharing my screen. Thank you for having us. Great, can everyone see that?
yes.
All right. So accessibility to period products and sustainable menstruation in Trinidad and Tobago. If I'm down, it's because my phone is in my hand with my notes, just letting you know that. All right. So the first thing we're going to go through is the introduction to Helping Her Foundation. Helping Her Foundation is a non-profit organization that provides sanitary products to less fortunate women and girls across Trinidad and Tobago. It started when Samantha, I'm just going to pull that note up. All right. Helping Her Foundation began in 2015 when Samantha Duncan. The foundation consists of 4 of us: Samantha, who is the president, and the vice president, Sarah Ilgachui, and Shannon McKenzie. The foundation purchases products using monetary donations as well as profits earned from fundraising events. Helping Her currently supports Sophia Home for Girls, St. Dominic's Homes, and Swaha Bishop Children's Home. In addition, we also provide to individuals upon request. We are always seeking to expand our reach, and we aim to be able to provide feminine sanitary products to as many women and girls as possible, not but regionally as well. A goal of ours is to also reduce the stigma of menstruation through education. Having your period isn't a luxury. All women should have access. Your period isn't a choice or a luxury. All women should have access to these products regardless of their financial situation. All right. So for those of you who aren't aware, all of the brands associated with this webinar today pull together to distribute boxes filled with necessities such as pads, underwear, masks, and sustainable menstruation products to women and young girls who do not always have these products access to them. We donated 20 of the boxes. A study conducted by UK in 2018 showed that an average of 58% of women feel embarrassed for simply having their period. Although the study wasn't locally conducted, a percentage of women who are not comfortable in their own skin during this natural process. This is just one stigma associated with menstruation, and it appears to stem from a lack of education. Most girls start being educated on their period after they've already experienced their first period. This allows for fair confusion and embarrassment to be able to creep in and themselves and associate with it. Also, periods have been deemed as a dirty process that is to be scorned and shied away from, not to be discussed as it's a period. The period is a means of the body cleansing itself of the unused material produced by the body in preparation for fertilization. That's it. Healthy women is wellness. There's nothing wrong or dirty about this. What is unhygienic, however, is if you wear the same pad, tampon, cup, or liner for too long, which is more than 8 hours, or which is actually roughly a night's rest. Doing this allows stable blood, sweat, and bacteria to settle and create for the growth of bacteria around and in your vagina, which can lead to severe health issues. It is ideal to change your products every 4 to 6 hours or more. Gender bias. They are, as we know, men who shame women because of their shame themselves because of their periods, and the women who shame other women because of their periods. So I'm not sure if any of you all have experiences like we get a period and kind of like if you need a tampon or a pad and you forget and you're like, oh God, you're asking silently, or like you're going to the bathroom and you know you're hiding it. So I mean, how many of you could raise your hand in the Zoom thing, or even if you don't have your video up and you put your hand up, like how many of you have a period bag that you have underwear, tampons, pads, panty liners, what else? Medicine that you'll carry around on a day-to-day basis? Same. I actually have one in my car, one in my work bag, one in my hand. So, you know, these things happen to all of us. And Samantha is here, but she also wanted to share her story. So Sam gets embarrassed when she's around men, but like when she's around friends that she doesn't know their views on the subject. Even if it's a close friend that she's comfortable with, it's still like, you know, hi. And helping, I think, after being in helping her, we stress about telling your period story and, you know, being proud about it. So whereas beforehand, you know, I was my family and I was getting really bad pain, I'd be like, oh, I'm not feeling well. Now I'm almost a little too blatant. They're like, okay, Celeste, I think we should be proud of. You know, there are a lot of women who don't have the luxury of having their periods because they may have other symptoms, and you need to be open and talk about it. And these are things that it's a taboo topic, like your period's a taboo topic. Women's issues sometimes I feel is a taboo topic. And I think the person to start removing this taboo from the topic and having conversations with your friends. And you know, if someone brings up the conversation, be like all for it, not shy about sharing stories if you have any. Educational workshops. So one way to remove the stigma or the taboo is talking about it, not only with us, not only with your friends, but also with the upcoming youth. We did demos. We actually took one of our friends, Amanda's a doctor, so we asked her to go along with us. So we did a full presentation. What's really nice about it is I like to call them like house mothers that are there to assist the girls. They left the room and they allowed it to be us. So because we were younger, they found that they were so much more comfortable just chatting with us. And you're like, you know, the first time this happened and they asking us questions, they're like, I was just, you know, embarrassed questions to call her Miss. So I was embarrassed to ask these questions to Miss, and they asked us questions and we spoke about it. We went through like, you know, the proper application of your pad is supposed to be used. A lot of the times we don't donate tampons because of the homes are run by religious organizations, and they don't encourage the use of tampons. So just a note about that. We found that from the shops that they got more engaging and more comfortable. And the more they ask, the more that they learn, which is great. That's how we are helping to remove the stigma against it. All right. Sustainable menstruation products. They are products. So these products, like the cup and the washable pad, sorry, can save hundreds to thousands of dollars at the time to buy into disposable products by the user. These products also help reduce landfill waste as there's less piling up over the years. Unfortunately, many areas in Trinidad do not always clean water availability. The more sustainable products are always the most ideal for women, as they may not be able to clean this. So some of our homes don't always have access to running water. So as much as we would love to try and go more sustainable, it is harder because if you don't have water, then you can't wash these products properly. And our main focus for providing these products is for women's health. And if it is that you can't clean the product, you don't want the girls get sick or the women get sick from the products. This doesn't mean that we are not we're not opposed to it. It just means that we have to try and find a way around it in order to help those that we provide. We are hoping to introduce the cups, the menstruation cups, but I think it's a part of the education, and we need to educate the women and girls about it beforehand, because I'm not sure about you all, but even when I've spoken about it within some of my social groups, it's still kind of a taboo topic, and not everyone is open to using it. We want to make sure that the products that we are giving the girls and women feel comfortable using the products, so they do use them. What I do. So period situations. These are just going to make you kind of think. Some of them I'm going to ask you to like raise your hand, or you can put it on the side. All right, so first one. So you have no pads, liner, or tampons. Get your period in a public place and have to run to the bathroom and use toilet paper wadded in your underwear until you were able to get an actual pad or similar. So this is actually how the foundation started. So Samantha was at home. Sam is one of 3 girls, so usually her mom has products well stocked. And I guess for some reason they didn't have. And her mom was at work, no one was at home, she didn't have a car, so say that she could go and purchase products. And it was for a while. And basically this is how she had to control her bleeding until her family came home, and it made her think, you know, people who can't afford these products do this on a monthly basis, because it's not the most comfortable, right? You feel self-conscious, oh gosh, because there's nothing between that toilet paper and our underwear to see like hold the blood. If you sit down and you feel an extra flow, then it's that extra flow. When you stand up, sometimes you're like, oh fuck, I need to check this out. Situation 2. So you were able to offer another girl or woman a pad or tampon that they didn't have any for themselves. So I went to Providence, and we would be in class. Oh, anybody have a pad? Sometimes we just catch ourselves in a situation where you don't have, or if you go out to a party and you know you weren't expecting, I like to call it time of month, Man just shows up. You could like raise your hand, or you could raise your hand on Zoom if you feel comfortable. Or you're buying pads and cash it product in a plastic bag and tied it up for you. So I actually spoke to my grandmother about this, and my grandmother, she's 80 now. And she's like, you know, you all have it easy. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, when I was younger, they used to wrap it with gazette paper. Meaning like newspaper, and wrap it so you have to walk with it. And I'm like, what? She's like, yes, and it was the most embarrassing thing. And I'm like, even today when I speak to them, so I actually play cards with a bunch of old ladies on a Saturday. They're all, it's like 5 of them, and they're all 80. And I spoke to them about this project that we do, that, you know, we go out and we distribute pads, distribute tax liners to those. And they spoke to me about when they were starting their period and how their experience was. Yes, you know, like we used to have to use a cloth, and they used to wash that cloth and reuse it every single month. And I was like, okay. And they're like, that's where blood clots come from. And I was like, thank you for that education, Grandma. Appreciate it. So situation. So, you pick your products on the way to your bathroom. Have any of y'all done that in school? Does anyone still do that? So I work in a male-dominated industry, and I find that I still do it on the way to the bathroom. Say the bathroom is just down a corridor, and even then, like I have, you know, I purchased the more expensive tampons that are like this small, but easier to hide, just because of this. And I'm thinking about this, and I think less hands are gonna go up for this. You ever sat down with another woman or girl this conception that they had about their period? I'm trying to think of some crazy ones we may have had. Anyone have a situation like this they're willing to share with us?
If anyone has a situation, you can unmute your mic and share.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm vaguely remembering this. School was a while ago, but I remember in school talking to another girl, and at the time we were about maybe Form 4, Form 5, and explaining to her that you can still get pregnant while you're on your period, and that the rhythm method of contraception is not foolproof, and that was complete news to her. So that was something that you know, that's not something you want to be learning after you're already sexually active.
Yeah, that's definitely not something you want to learn after the situation. Thank you for sharing. A male family member or friend or even stranger said something degrading towards you while you're on your what happened? Your PMS in a while? I mean, I feel like this is the one that you get the most. I have 3 brothers, and it's not even my time of month, and they're like, oh gosh, is that time? And you're like, no, I'm just naturally this bitch. Or even a female family member. I mean, we all know that it happens more than likely. family member might have even been the person to sit you down and say, hey, you know, this is part of growing up. This is actually what's happening, and explain to you what's happening. But then they turn around and do derogatory comments like, are you PMSing? So these situations to think about. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced at least some of these. And if not, maybe the next time, or if it does happen to you, think about it, wow, I do understand. We hope this, sorry, we hope the situations give you a little more insight in how period products and education can make a difference in someone's life. You don't forget when you were helped, when you were in need, or how someone made you feel. It's very much a mental thing. And we encourage all of us following this webinar to be your sister's keeper, and help her. So as we said before, it's a choice, not a luxury. All women should have access to these products regardless of their financial situation. And also we wanted to know that have anyone that, or any homes you think would benefit from our foundation. We would love if you can reach out to us and let us know, because we are always looking to expand our reach. So Helping Her Foundation actually puts on a tea party we were putting on a tea party every year, and then just came in and took that away from us. But hopefully we will be able to resume events soon, and we'll be able to put back on our event that's actually a source of income to provide these products. But if you know anyone or any homes that you think would benefit from Helping Her Foundation, please reach out. You can contact us on Instagram at Helping Her TT, on Facebook at Helping Her Foundation, on our website, www.helpingherfoundation.com. Send us an email, or if you have our contact number, they're all on the website. You can always WhatsApp us and say, hey, you know, this person, I really appreciate if you can reach out to them. I think they would be a good fit for you. We would definitely really appreciate that. As I said, we're always trying to expand our. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
Presenting. Thank you for listening and participating.
Thank you so much, Celeste, and thank you so much for the work that you all are doing and Helping Her. It's so important to provide this type of relief to persons that menstruate. I personally did appreciate the situations, because I think you realize how common it is to reinforce myths and misconceptions and even internalize that hate. And so it's really, really important. And thank you for sharing. And yes, so anyone who is on the call, who's on this webinar today, if there are anyone that you know, if you yourself might be in need of period products, be sure to reach out to Helping Her. Are there any questions from the audience from Celeste's presentation? If you don't have your questions now, you can always save them. You can always get them and we will ask it at the end. So we're going to move on.
Heads up for anyone who's presenting after me. Anyone who's commenting in the chat, when you're presenting, you can't actually see the chat. You can see people on the side. So it's really helpful if you just say something if they're asking, just giving you all a heads up about that.
Awesome. I see Christine's, people were really engaging. I'm seeing Christine's hand up. Christine, you can go ahead and unmute and give your comment.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So grateful to be in this space. I have a question. Is it only based in Trinidad, or do you have partnership with other Caribbean countries as well, considering the donation?
It was breaking up a little bit.
I'm gonna try it again. I don't know, hopefully it's better. So basically what I was asking, in terms of partnership, are you only helping those in Trinidad, like organization based in Trinidad, or are you also looking to partner with other Caribbean countries?
Okay, so I think I get a gist of your question from the little parts I'm hearing. So currently, yes, we are only helping in Trinidad. We are on island, and that is our eventual goal. But if you do know of any other persons that need in other countries, we can reach out to contacts that we may have in other countries and see if we can. We'll try our best to do so.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'll follow up with you on Instagram.
Okay, we'll look out for that.
Yeah. And Christine is from the Breadfruit
Any other
Collective
questions?
in Guyana. Is there, let's check the chat. No questions yet, but we will make sure, I'll make sure to check the chat to see if there are any more questions that come up. So we would like to invite our second presenter for this evening, Shalini Bahadur, who's a Caribbean feminist. Shalini is an MPhil candidate and tutor at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, IGDS, at UWI St. Augustine. As a young activist, she is committed to the struggle for gender justice and social change. She holds the title of Head of Research and Data Analysis at Feminine Caribbean, an NGO dedicated to advancing the Caribbean through education, conversation, and the social good with an intersectional Caribbean feminist lens. She has been an activist in this space for over 5 years and continues to use her knowledge to help educate and empower others. Welcome, Shalini.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to represent Caribbean Feminists. And I'm happy to be sharing some of the results that we've got, which I will get into. So I just want to share my screen. 1 second. Okay. You all seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so today I'm actually going to talk about a project that Celeste actually kind of introduced in her presentation, and that is the Safe Cycle project. And the partners on that would be Feminine Caribbean. We also have Caribbean Feminists, and we also have on the call Amy Lee Bach, who is from Lilypads as a partner in the project as well. So what is the Safe Cycle project about? So Safe Cycle is a campaign that's geared towards ending period poverty and promoting menstrual equity in Trinidad and Tobago. Although menstruation is a natural and normal process, millions of people around the world lack access to sanitary products, safe and hygienic spaces in which to use them, and as well they face really terrible stigmas and taboos associated with menstruation, which would have been touched on by Celeste in her presentation. Now, as an intersectional feminist organization, we believe that promoting menstrual health is a key factor in achieving gender equity and justice. Menstrual or period poverty is not just about giving or distributing products for persons. That's one aspect. But it's also about educating and ensuring that they feel empowered. So you give a person a pad, but if you don't challenge taboos, then that person is going to be ashamed to take that pad in a nutshell. But when you start to break down the taboos and the stigmas associated with this, and women or menstruating persons are not allowed or they do not feel like it's something they should be embarrassed about, then they take that pad with dignity and pride. And that's the whole point that's the whole mission that we have from the Safe Cycle campaign. Now, through our campaign, we would have opted to use the phrase people who menstruate or menstruating persons rather than just say women or girls, because we want to really ensure that our project is inclusive to persons like the trans community who may also be menstruating but may not identify as a woman or a girl. We also want to make sure that non-binary persons are included as well. So we do not want to limit our project. So we want to kind of remove that gender language when we were thinking and conceptualizing this project. Now, cultural and religious stigmas attached to those or to the menstrual cycle makes it really difficult for persons who menstruate to share their experiences and seek assistance in alleviating their struggle to receive period products, which would have been one of the situations that Celeste would have mentioned, right? Now, in 2016, the government of Trinidad and Tobago had released a final list for the zero rated items. And these included items such as sanitary towels and tampons. Now, although the tax have been removed from the products, which technically on paper it would have been like, oh, these products are now cheaper, there are still persons who menstruate who are unable to afford or maintain a healthy cycle. Now, our campaign is a three-pronged approach. So we want to have menstrual health education, which is really important for that empowerment aspect, but also general knowledge, right? It's about removing the stigmas, removing the taboos. Now, the second part of our project was a distribution aspect. We wanted to distribute 100 packages across Trinidad and Tobago, and in these care packages we had pads, tampons, heating pads, underwears, a little journal so you could keep track of your periods. We also had feminine wipes as well included in the package, and each box was a 2-month supply for menstruating persons. We initially wanted to distribute 100, but thankfully, because of donations and contributions, we were able to create a little over than 120 boxes, I believe. Yeah, so we had over 100 boxes, which was excellent. But even though we crossed the 100, there were still so many people messaging us on Instagram. They were interested, they knew of someone. So I mean, 120 boxes seems like a lot for just a small group of persons to be distributing, but in reality, even 120 boxes was not enough. And our last step towards, ending menstrual poverty, period poverty, sorry, is that policy change aspect. So I feel like once we have legislation, then we could actually, advocate more, right? I think legislation and policy change is really what we're aiming for. And we see the need for each of these 3 steps. So now I just want to get into, so as part of our project, we had a survey. And this survey, the purpose of it was to serve as a gateway into understanding the experiences of persons who menstruate in Trinidad and Tobago, so that we, as a team, are better equipped to help provide to the needs of the persons and promote a safer menstrual cycle. And this project, we wanted to get a variety of experiences, right? So we wanted to know, basically how did they feel having a period and all these different experiences. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, I'll only focus on the questions that were asked pertaining to accessibility of the menstrual products. Now, these 2 general questions we were asked. So we did have 408 responses in total for our survey. And so we asked persons, are you familiar with the term period poverty? And 66.2% said that yes, they were actually familiar with the term period poverty. But then we had 67% said no, that they weren't familiar. And then we also had 71% saying that they kind of know what it means, but maybe perhaps they never used it in their everyday lives. We also wanted to ask, how comfortable are you with discussing the topic of menstruation in general? Now, surprisingly, I was actually surprised by this because we had over 50% said how they actually were very comfortable, talking about menstruation and discussing that topic. 41.2%, which equated to 168 persons, said how they were comfortable. But then we had the minority, right? They said that 7 persons from the survey were uncomfortable discussing this topic, and then 5 persons said that they were very uncomfortable discussing this topic. So even though majority said that how they were comfortable, there is still need to push this education and to break these taboos, break these stigmas, because even if one person is uncomfortable or is very uncomfortable, that means that we still need to keep doing what we are doing and educating persons. Now, another question that we asked concerning availability, accessibility was, do you think period products are affordable? Now, out of the 408 responses, 211 persons said that no, they do not think that period products are affordable. 160 persons said that they kind of think period products are accessible or affordable, and 37 of these respondents said yes, they think that period products are affordable. Now, our second question, well, one of our other questions included, have you ever been unable to access period products due to financial difficulties? No, so 282 persons said how no, they've never been unable to access period products, which I mean, that's excellent, considering that over half of the respondents are able to purchase these products. But then we have 67 persons who said sometimes, so only sometimes they are able to have access to these products or be able to purchase these products, which means when you kind of think about it, is that maybe perhaps 1 month you have money to buy products for 1 month, but then what happens to the other month when you literally have to decide, do you want to buy food or do you want to buy menstrual products? And then we see here that 59% said that how yes, they have never been able to financially purchase period products, which is really shocking. We also further asked, do you know of anyone who is unable to access period products? Now, you being able to purchase these products is great, and you should acknowledge your privilege for that, but do you know of anyone who is unable to access these products? Now, over 50% said how no, they aren't aware of anyone who isn't able to access products. And, the number seems, okay, well, it's fine. They don't know. But there's a lot of things we need to consider. Perhaps their circle is also within their class. So there's that dynamic. Or maybe persons who can't afford, there's a shame, right? Say that you can't afford period products. So maybe they don't share that with their friends, they don't share that with their family, or even people like us who just come in and asking these questions. They may feel a little, that element of shame when people are asking about this very sensitive or personal topic. Now, 86% said that they think that they know, so they kind of get that feel like, maybe they say that they could afford it, but actually, I feel based on other circumstances, they aren't. And then we see 95% responded that yes, they know someone who is unable to access period products. Another question is, does your setting or your environment offer support to accessing free period products? And 86.6% of the persons said no, that their setting or environment does not support free period products, which is really shocking. And that is a main concern for us, because our real mission is to have these products free for anyone to access. Or even if we can't get it free as yet, at least have those who are in dire need of accessing these products. They need to ensure that there are places where they can access free period products. The persons who said that yes, their school or environment offers free products, is this support easily accessible? To which over 50% said no. So even though there are mechanisms in place for these products to be distributed, the support isn't accessible, and we do not have insight into why, but we will be following up, perhaps in the future to find out, why isn't it easily accessible? Now, if they said no, that the environment does not provide free products, we ask, if answered no, do you feel that you would benefit and use the service? To which 77.1% said yes, that they would see the benefit of having free menstrual products in their workspace or school. Now, the last question that we ask that I'll present is, do you have any disabilities? Now, we really wanted to try to be inclusive, and something that we overlook, which I believe Lorena would be expanded on in her presentation, is that idea of ability and disability, and how disability really affects your experience. Now, a shortcoming, full transparency, a shortcoming of this survey is that this was the only question that we asked concerning disability. But now that we have the stats and the persons, we have access to the persons who said that, because 19 of them stated that yes, they do have a form of disability. We will reach out to them and follow up, to really get that sort of experience that they have, which will be very different from someone who is able to, support themselves and also to basically use these products for themselves. So that was a shortcoming, but we will be in the future following up with these 19 persons to get an insight of their experience with menstruating. Now, moving forward, and this is the last slide for my presentation. We are going to continue menstrual health education through our social media platforms. So what we have been doing so far is sending out graphics to our platforms, which would be Facebook, Instagram, and even Twitter. We would share, education on menstrual health in general, issues. We share all sorts of things. So I would encourage you to follow our social media platforms, and even health issues such as endometriosis, I believe, is a key one that we try to focus on. And we also try to share information on where people who experience these symptoms and issues with their mental health, where they could go and who they could call and reach out to if they do have these issues. Now, this is just a summary. This is just like a quarter of the questions we would have asked on the survey. But moving forward, we're going to compile all this data, analyze this data in conjunction with our research questions and our objectives. And we're going to put this into a report, which would be published. A main issue that we have right now in Trinidad is there is no sufficient amount of research on mental health or period poverty in Trinidad and Tobago. So this report would really significantly help in getting that stats and getting qualitative data as well when we speak with these persons. And lastly, our next step, as we create this report, is advocating for policy change. So the main thing that we want is, in Trinidad, how we have the food cards, we want to have a card for menstrual products where persons who are unable to financially support themselves could access this card through the government, and then this card would only be used for menstrual products, nothing else. So this is where we're at right now. We've distributed the boxes, we're compiling the data. So the next step moving forward would be policy change, and I really want us, to keep abreast with the things that we're doing, because we really strongly believe that policy change is the way, and we're really going to strongly fight for this policy change. So I end my presentation with that. We could just hold the questions for last, I believe, if anyone has any questions for me. I'm not sure. But thank you again for this platform to share our preliminary data.
Thank you so much, Shalini. Listening to this, I really got like, I'm very hopeful. And even being a part of Feminine, this research will help so greatly. Like, when you think about countries that have actually done significant work towards ending period poverty, like New Zealand, and look at the work Scotland has been doing with having period products accessible and free for secondary school students for their population. I think it's something that is often overlooked in the Caribbean, but it's such necessary and important work. So thank you so much, Shalini. Thank you again to Celeste it followed so perfectly, because we really got that insight, the proof as to, the state of accessibility here in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you again, Shalini. So next up, which follows quite well, and you'll see why, I'd like to invite Lorena Ramparan to present. Lorena is a final year law student at the Hugh Wooding Law School. She's also a social justice advocate and uses her position as director at the Down Syndrome Family Network to help raise awareness and advance the rights of persons with Down syndrome and other intellectual and physical disabilities. Welcome, Lorena, and thank you for being here.
Hi, Ashley. Thank you for the introduction today, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to be part of this discussion. So the theme around this webinar was essentially around Carnival, sustainability, and equity. And to me, what sustainability means is that when I hear the word sustainability, I think about the long term. So that's about putting things in place now or doing what is necessary now to ensure that in the long term, the work does not need to be repeated. And in the context of persons with disabilities, sustainability means education, changing societal perception, normalization through the breakdown of attitudinal, structural, and social barriers now, in order that persons with disabilities are fully integrated and included in all discussions and in all aspects of society. This ensures that they are autonomous, independent, self-sufficient persons in the future who don't need to do all the extra work now that is needed to get them to reach to that point. In relation to how the Down Syndrome Family Network has approached sustainability in the context of menstruation, to be perfectly honest with you, it's not something that we have approached directly. We have addressed sexuality and sought to raise awareness around this topic. And I guess in like certain ways, sexuality and menstruation are linked because menstruation is often associated with entering into sexual maturity. And with this comes a lot of difficult topics to navigate. However, it was only when Shalini had approached me for Feminists Our Period initiative that the topic really came to the forefront of our minds. And of course, there have always been general discussions among the parents and caregivers in our network asking for advice, etc. But it was never approached by us in any formal way. So moving forward, I believe that this discussion today and the discussion that we had for the Our Period initiative has definitely put our minds on focus on this topic, and it will become a part of our general advocacy as well. In terms of the challenges that we see in achieving sustainability, I think perhaps the biggest challenge is breaking down social and attitudinal barriers as well as communication barriers. And the way that I see it is that breaking down these barriers in terms of people's attitudes will cause a ripple effect in causing and provoking further changes, especially when it comes to structural and organizational changes. Because if people's perceptions about menstruation and disabilities are not changed, then obviously the structures and organizations already in place that hamper period equity are not going to change. But more specifically, challenges in relation to sustainability and menstruation is directly associated with persons with disabilities and their access to reproductive and sexual health services. So accessing these services as well as products often involves long waiting lists, poorly managed appointment systems, and sometimes this system is just naturally very complex for a person with a physical or intellectual disability to navigate. So a person with a physical disability may not be able to arrive early or wait all day, and a person with an intellectual disability may not have someone who can help them to navigate a complex system. So a lot of challenges that a person with a disability face in relation to sustainability is directly linked to their lack of access and inclusion. And this is access both in terms of physical access and access to the relevant information, knowledge, both for persons with disabilities and their caregivers, because persons with disabilities usually navigate their day-to-day lives with the assistance of someone. So their caregivers are people that need to also be considered and included as part of the discussion as well. Also, the systems currently in place do not take their needs into account because of the focus in Trinidad on the medical definition of disability as opposed to a social definition. So, a medical definition is very individualistic and focuses on what is wrong with their bodies that makes them a person with a disability. However, a social definition will revolve around a person being viewed as disabled by society rather by their bodies. So, in a sense, society makes them disabled by virtue of its inability to make the appropriate accommodations. And the most common example that I used, and I used it for the Our Period initiative when we had a discussion, was glasses. So, technically, we all have some form of visual impairment if we wear glasses. However, society has evolved to such an extent that we are accommodated to the extent that we don't feel like we have a disability. So this example of a person with glasses is a perfect example of a difference between focusing on a medical definition of disability as opposed to a social definition of disability, where the social definition focuses on the lack of infrastructure and accommodations in place for these persons that hamper their mobility and access and inclusion. So obviously, if persons with disabilities are given access and accommodations are made for them and are generally included more in systems with a focus on the social definition of disability, this will be good for sustainability. This means that they will get access to both education and products that they need in relation to menstruation. And this pattern thus carries on in the future, so other persons with disabilities do not have to worry about these same problems. In the context of living with a disability, there are certain challenges persons might face in using sustainable period products. There's a growing trend now towards being more green. And of course, persons with disabilities also want to be a part of this movement and do what they need to do to be part of the change for the better. But obviously, having a period as a person with a disability presents its own set of unique challenges, and how a woman or a person with have a person having their period who also has a disability, they navigate their day-to-day lives very different from the neurotypical person or the average person. And periods in general is not something that's openly talked about, and women with disabilities are not automatically included in that conversation. So there's a kind of taboo upon a taboo here because we see that periods are already a taboo topic, and disability is sometimes considered a taboo topic. So the taboo upon the taboo kind of further hinders the inclusion of women and other persons with disabilities into the menstrual equity or the period equity conversation. But in relation to sustainable products, there's generally a lack of equity in the design and distribution of menstrual products. So take, for example, a person in a wheelchair. So this is a person who may need help with daily tasks like bathing, dressing, cooking, and they therefore need to plan activities around their period as well. So this is a person who's also sitting, which may make cramping more difficult, and because they aren't granted the ability to move around to alleviate their cramps in ways that we may be able to. And pads and tampons can also be very bulky and uncomfortable due to their sitting position. So the questions that need to be asked is, how do we now create a pad that feels comfortable for someone sitting down all the time and is also easy for another person to put on and take off for them? And how do we relieve cramps for someone who has limited mobility? Because for persons with limited mobility, there's something called a Keela cup, which is the green alternative to pads, the the menstrual cups. So the Keela cup is for persons with disabilities, and that one is actually easier to remove, and it has a rounded lip, and it's more comfortable than the regular menstrual cup. But there's also a problem with access to these in Trinidad as well, because it's not something that locally a lot of people pay attention to in order for them to import it for persons with disabilities here to access. But let's take for consideration people with intellectual disabilities now. Managing their periods comes with a whole set of other challenges. For example, some people may have trouble understanding what's going on with their bodies, and they may need clear and simple support and education. Also, persons with intellectual disabilities may have trouble keeping track of time, maintaining habits, so products like tampons and menstrual cups that need to be inserted and then removed aren't ideal. So for these persons, we need to find a process altogether to help them manage these issues. And sometimes they resort to menstrual manipulation, which is an option that they use to suppress their periods or reduce their menstrual flow, which makes it easier for them as well as their caregivers. And the ironic thing is, with a person with a disability, their period is sometimes the only thing that actually makes them feel like a regular person. But yet still they have to navigate such I won't say, well, yes, difficult issues, but unique issues that other people or who have periods don't also have to navigate. But I want to pay more attention to a point where they say that sometimes period proof underwear and pads are more effective for persons who may have an intellectual disability because it doesn't require them to keep track of the time that they keep it on for, and they don't have to maintain any habits that they would have to maintain with a regular tampon or a pad. So, but if you think about it, period proof underwear would also work great for the average person who is not intellectually disabled but who may be forgetful or busy, or who may have severe anxiety or symptoms similar to ADHD. And that just goes to show that when you focus on disability and making products more accessible for persons with disabilities, you actually make it better and more accessible for all persons who may not have a physical or intellectual disability. So that's the extent of my presentation today. I hope you all learn something from it. I hope you just gain more knowledge and are more aware now. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Lorena. I'm always so thrilled to hear you speak because every time you offer, new insight and really challenge the way that we think and challenge the work that we do to ensure that it's something that is accessible and that reaches those that need it, but also ensure that the work is something that covers all bases as much as possible. So thank you so much for that. Recently I was thinking about how much pain I experience monthly, and this is without having a physical disability. Imagine someone who can't get up every minute to go wash out their reusable pads if they're using it. And also if they're living alone. So there's so many things to think about when navigating that. So thank you so much. And I hope that there can be some collaborative work in the future between helping her, between Feminet and even and Down Syndrome Family Network, to really see how we can maximize the work that we do to reach persons. So thank you so much. So
I just wanted to interrupt and add, it's so weird that we didn't plan this, but today is actually, I believe, World Down
World Down
Syndrome
Syndrome
Day.
Day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it's really nice that we actually had this presentation on this day, so that people could be more aware of this aspect or menstruation as something that we need to be speaking about in addition to persons with disabilities.
Yes.
So thank you,
Sure.
Lorena. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I learn something new every time you speak. So I'm glad that we had this.
Yes. And also the theme being connect. And so it's really thinking about how do we connect with persons in various communities that also are, can be beneficiaries. So moving on to our final presentation, before we get to our Q&A session, I'd like to invite Emily back. And Amy is a historian, artist, and activist who runs Lily Pads Project. They make cloth menstrual pads and also do outreach on sexual, reproductive, and menstrual health education, which is super fantastic work. And so I'm very excited to welcome Amy.
Thanks, Ashley, and thanks to the organizers and everyone for creating this space and for having these much needed conversations. I feel like we kind of ended up flowing very naturally into each other's presentations. And Lorena, thank you so much for that, bringing up the topic of menstruation and disability, which is something that's actually very personal to me as well, because I am disabled, I'm autistic. And that's something that's been very important to my journey of creating lily pads and of taking on period poverty in my own way. I started up lily pads about 2 years ago now, and it was basically born out of a need to kind of feel like I was doing something that was bringing something to my country and bringing something into the world that was positive. So I wanted to try and find a local need and to find a way to identify that need and to fill it. And that's basically what led to the creation of lily pads. It started off with my own personal journey into reusables and figuring out what I wanted to use for my own body, and then realizing that there was not a lot of access locally. So I thought that I would try and create something locally that would be more accessible, and also in that process realizing the need for sexual, reproductive, and menstrual health education, which is, you know, so needed to break that taboo and to change the culture so that we can empower people. So that was basically where that started. And what I do right now, as Ashley said, I make pads, I sew them myself, and I also have a page on Instagram called the Lily Pads Project. It's Lily Pads TT. And there I try to have as many of the varied discussions surrounding sexual health, reproductive health, menstrual health, and diving sometimes into disability justice and stuff like that as well. So yes, I'll basically run you all through a kind of crash course of what reusables are and what reusables are available right now. So there are several different types of reusables, as everyone before me would have kind of mentioned. There are cups, there's reusable underwear, and then there is cloth menstrual pads, which is what I make. So I don't have any reusable underwear here, but I do have a cup, so y'all could kind of see what the cups look like. So these would be the normal long stem cups, which I suppose, as Lorena was saying, are not accessible for everyone. But yeah, so this is basically what it looks like. They are silicone based, medical grade silicone, and they function similar to tampons. So they're inserted, but unlike tampons, they're not like an absorbent sponge. They actually trap the blood inside. So the blood has no contact with your body after it's caught basically in the cup. And yeah, basically it's useful for people who are accustomed to tampons, who prefer something inserted, and especially good if you go to the beach often and you like swimming like me. What I make is reusable menstrual pads. So I have one of my maxi pads here, and I actually designed a lot of the fabrics that I use. So I wanted them to have like a really Caribbean feel to the prints and to help people feel a little more comfortable making that transition. So yeah, this is what my pads look like. This print on top is cotton, and then in the back there's fleece, which is water resistant and also is like a very frictiony fabric so that it doesn't move around on your underwear. yeah, so that's basically what I do over at Lilypads. That and the educational aspect, which for me, a lot of the problems that I had with trying to introduce people to reusables is that there is a taboo talking about periods in general. And then, of course, there are a lot of social and cultural barriers so that people are kind of on different levels of the spectrum of being accepting to the idea of even using reusables in the first place. So I think that kind of comes out of a larger problem of AFAB bodies that's assigned female at birth. So that would include women, trans men, some non-binary people who would be, you know, under the umbrella of menstruating persons. And, you know, AFAB bodies are less researched in the medical community in general. And there's also the social and cultural taboos to discussing these topics at all, which I think is why Safe Cycle is such an important project. I'm really glad to see some of the data that came out of it. So thanks for sharing that, Shalini. Yeah, there's also accessibility barriers, as some of you all would have mentioned already, which is that not everyone can use reusables because not everyone has access to running water. And then, you know, there is the added step of once you're reusing something, there is a cleaning process, which is also not accessible for everyone. So yeah, that's basically the issues that I've been trying to tackle slowly with my little one-person team over the last couple of years, and also working with Feminine and Caribbean feminists and all these amazing women and you know, people doing this type of work. I want to jump in a little bit and talk about autism and menstruation, as we were kind of touching on disability before. So to give you all kind of a first-hand account of what it really means to be disabled and to deal with a neurodivergent brain and how that handles menstruation. So a couple of the things that are issues that particularly neurodivergent people would have to deal with. Sensory issues. A lot of us, myself included, have a high level of sensory sensitivity. So things like noises, touch, sound, smell, all of those things can cause sensory overload for people like me. And that can be quite debilitating on a bad day. So that is something that in general is an issue that neurodivergent people or other people with different mental health disabilities would have to deal with. Another thing that also happens is, you know, we get PMS, and emotional dysregulation is something that neurodivergent people also deal with to a higher extent usually. So a lot of us who menstruate would deal with mood swings around our periods, and that in itself can be a whole journey to deal with. But particularly if you have a type of neurodiversity, it can be even more intense and it can basically shut down your whole day. So it's about learning different coping mechanisms to navigate this. And that's something I think a lot of people are doing on their own because like Lorena said, there is not a lot of structural support that disabled people have currently. Specifically, when it comes to reusables and when it comes to people switching to reusables, for the autistic community especially, change of routine is something that is very delicate and can be difficult to manage. I myself, it took me a very long time to take this step to change to reusables, and that was after a lot of positive reinforcement of seeing people use it, hearing different stories, doing a lot of research. And so I understand why it's difficult for people to make that switch immediately, because my literal brain is wired so that it does not like switching up, you know, whatever is my regular routine. So that is something that neurodivergent people have to deal with, particularly when it comes to making a change to reusables. But for me, what I've been trying to do with lily pads is basically empowering people who menstruate with information and allowing them to make informed decisions about their body so that everyone can decide what works for them, because there is no correct answer to what is the best period product. There is only what is the product that works for you, for your body, for your circumstance, for your accessibility. And so that's something that we all have to be mindful of, and myself especially, because I'm trying to sell pads, but also pads are not for everybody. So I try to be mindful of that and to encourage people to look beyond what I do and see all the full range of options that are available to them and pick which one works best. To me, the reason I wanted to do this project, the Lily Pads project, it also has to do with the environment and sustainability, creating less waste, and also, in the long run, I think it was Shalini who said that, maybe it was Celeste earlier on who was talking about that it is a lot cheaper in the long run to use reusables because you're not having to restock every month. So my pads last 5+ years. Actually, if you really take care of them, they can last up to 10 years, which I think the cups are also around that time. So it really is a huge difference in terms of how much plastic waste that we are releasing into our environment. So yeah, sustainability is something that's very important to me. I think it involves a whole bunch of different things that we need to fix, all kind of in tandem and working together. That includes, community building. It includes a much more powerful push to protect our environment, protect our surroundings, our rich biodiversity in this beautiful country that we have and this beautiful Caribbean. Also, justice and equity for marginalized communities, because without that, we will never be able to have accessibility for everyone and menstrual equity for everyone. And also, I think an important part of it is breaking cycles of trauma, which is the root of the menstrual taboos and the difficulties that we have in discussing these problems. And we have a responsibility to heal from the pain of our ancestors and, of colonialism and all these things. And yeah, so that's basically what I've been trying to do. And I'm so excited to be working with Feminine, working on Safe Cycle, and to be a part of this conversation as well. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I'm sure that I joined so many people in really being grateful and thankful for your work. I remember the first time hearing you speak about lily pads, and I was completely blown away because I didn't know that there was actually a sustainable method towards menstruating that was actually happening at home here in Trinidad and Tobago. And so it's quite an eye opener. And also, all of the insights that you'd have brought in making sure that the work is inclusive and really caters to everyone. So thank you so much. I'm gonna move into the Q&A now. We had such great and insightful and important presentations. And I think, things like these are the correct steps to take in order to build an equal future, in order to, oh, hi Kitty, in order to ensure that we are all able to live a healthy and sustainable life, one that we feel happy in the sense of being able to live a good standard of life. And so my question to y'all, to the entire panel, I believe that helping her got dropped off. Their Wi-Fi is a bit unstable. So it will just be Amy, Lorena, and Shalini here with us. So why do you think, it's important to eliminate period poverty? I'm sure we already know, but for some insight, why should we care about eliminating period poverty? And so, yes, yes.
I think it all comes down to empowering people to be able to reach their highest selves, I guess. Maybe that's not the right wording, but basically to me, it comes down to lack of access to period products can have a whole ripple effect on a person's life. It could take someone out of school. It could take them away from job opportunities, or, you know, just having the ability to function throughout the month in a healthy way, to connect to their bodies in a healthy way, and to heal from trauma in a healthy way. And I think when you empower people that way, it's really exciting, because we have so many incredible, powerful minds just in this country alone that maybe they just don't have the access to share that with the rest of us. But then if we can support them, we can create that community, then we will have all these amazing voices available to, you know, improve all of our lives.
Yeah. Very, very important.
I'll add to that as well. I think what I would have mentioned in my presentation is that, period poverty, even though there's the word poverty there, is not just about resources. It's also about, that education. And I feel like personally, I am more for that, destroying the taboos and the stigmas and the myths associated with period, menstruating, bleeding. And there was actually, I believe, a couple years ago, I can't remember who or where I heard this from, but someone told me that, period blood is the only blood that doesn't come from violence. And that is something that really stood out to me, because we literally praise violence, and we look at, bloodshed from violence as, ooh, that's interesting, ooh, that's a talk, that's a topic. But then we hide away from blood that isn't shed from violence. I mean, yeah, it's painful. I mean, it's a painful experience for many persons, but we need to go back to kind of reducing that stigma, that taboo, that hush hush thing. I think we need to be more open now, and I've seen the change. I've seen the change where people are no longer, afraid to be tweeting about, that time of the month, or, where it cramps so bad, these things like that. I mean, maybe it's not where we're supposed to be. I feel like we should have been more, we should have reached a place where we should walk around with pads free. We should have free pads. We should have free menstrual products. But I still am seeing the gradual changes, and I'm hoping that our project actually pushes this forward, so that we could actually see real, tangible change happening.
Yes.
Generally, I'm a very emotional person. A lot of my passion for human rights, disability rights, women's rights comes from a very emotional place for me. And I feel like period equity is important because as a woman, I don't want to see other women or other people having to go through something that they don't have control of and not have access to certain products that they may need. So to me, period equity and the importance to me is also something that's emotional as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Such like really, really great points raised by everyone. And as Amy said, it's definitely a ripple effect. Not having access to period products can cause so many other things, not even having access to proper healthcare, to be able to know what's happening in your body. So a lot of folks, even through Safe Cycle Project, who would have reached out to us about like when they would have read the post and understand, oh my God, this is what endometriosis is. Oh my God, I actually have 4 out of these 5 symptoms, but also thinking that they also cannot afford to see a doctor to be able to get checked out, right? And we all know that endometriosis has, severe long-term effects. And so having proper access to healthcare, the resources, breaking the stigma, and really, really finding the culture around menstruation here in Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, the world. It's, you know, really, really important work if we are really to achieve, you know, proper sustainability and a future where we're all here and present and thriving. So thank you so much to you three for that. So are there any steps, any recommendations that you can give to persons who will listen to this webinar, who are actually tuned in now, as to what steps can they take towards eliminating period poverty? Because not everyone can make big changes to be able to donate on a large scale, or you know, but what are some little ways that persons can assist in ending period poverty?
I think, the smallest change I feel is just talking about your experience. And I feel like that in itself is extremely powerful. Just so share that experience. I'm using social media as an example because I feel like we're of that generation where everything is social media. But even, putting a tweet, maybe you had a bad period and just talk about that. And who knows, it could also lead to, I'm very big on the community building and community support, right? So you talk and you share your experience, and who knows, maybe you might have a friend, a follower who also have experience that, and you could kind of create that little consciousness building kind of feel where you have that support and someone that you could speak with, and knowing that you're not alone. I feel like another thing is to just share when you see information being put out, share the post, comment on the post, like the post. Even if you yourself can't donate, share the post asking, when persons put up posts asking for donations or asking for help, or asking for collaboration, you might not be able to collaborate, but somebody else who's following you may be able to do that. So I think it's just about being more vocal, making this discussion more public. I think is something small but could have a really big impact.
I definitely agree with Shalini, especially about the points with being more vocal, because I feel like that ties in with changing people's perceptions. And I think, as I alluded to in my presentation, I think changing people's perception is perhaps the biggest barrier that we face in seeing any real change happening. In terms of little things, I feel like the little things I do is being honest and open about my period experiences with the men in my lives, especially. Like, I'm very open about that aspect of my life now. When I was younger, I was literally ashamed of my period. But now I would go in Massy and I'm not gonna buy a plastic bag to put my pads in if that's the only thing I'm buying. So I walk out with my pads in my hand to the car. Like, yeah, they're my pads. Who cares, right? So I feel like little things like that, they really help to break down the taboo around periods and period products and ultimately changing perceptions around periods.
I think for me, I mean, I was always that person, and maybe it's because I'm autistic, and autistic people, we tend to kind of speak our mind no matter what. But I was the person in school who would, all the girls would be kind of shy about, and like, hey, you have a pad or something. And if I knew somebody needed one, I'd be the person who would put my hand up, even if it was a male teacher, and be like, excuse me, sir, class, does anyone have a pad that you can share with me? Thank you. And then just hand it to the person who needed it. Um, I lost my train of thought. But what I was going to say was that I think people need to investigate themselves. And we all have internalized biases and internalized aspects of this taboo that we've been growing up with and learned from our the previous generations. And I think um, constantly being mindful of that and being mindful of what are these ideas and concepts that we were raised with, how can we adapt them for modern world, and how can we become more inclusive to the needs of ourselves and also others. If you're not disabled, you can still educate yourself on disability issues. If you're not part of the LGBTQ community, you can still educate yourself, be an ally, and all of that is part of the community building and growing as a person within yourself. So
It's so important. So important. I think it's important for us to really recognize the tiny ways that we can really make big change. And so even if it's sharing another post or sharing your own, but really having the conversation at the center really helps to make others comfortable and to recognize, oh, this is something that we can change. There was something someone told me recently about words being law. So a lot of things once said by masses, it suddenly becomes law. So for example, in looking back years ago before corporal punishment was not exactly made illegal, but our prime minister then made a statement about it not being encouraged. It wasn't even passed in parliament, but folks stopped doing it in schools. And I think doing this, having that movement, speaking out about stuff is really a great move towards achieving the future that we all want. And we all have a part to play. Everyone has a role in the revolution, right? And so to wrap things up, what does a period positive world look like to you? So you can think about it and then you can send us off.
I think my answer is very simple. To me, it's a world where we don't need to have these conversations. It just is. So I feel like that's my answer. It's the world just is without the need to have these conversations.
I actually agree with Lorena. Like, I feel like a period positive world would be where women and girls and other menstruating persons are not ashamed to walk around with their pads. They are not ashamed to, you sit down in the stall and you have to rip your pad off your underwear like so quiet because you don't want anybody else to know. I feel like it's such a small thing, but has such a, exactly that, a trickle down effect. I think this really contributes, having menstrual health equity is really important for gender equity, gender justice, and it's also linked to all these, sustainable development goals that we always speak about at these conferences and these meetings. So like, quality education, mental health education is important for that. No poverty and then period poverty is important for that. Good health and well-being, having good mental health is important. And those are the sustainable goals that we want to achieve, but yet we're ignoring mental health. Why? Because of these taboos. So I think a period positive would be exactly what Lorena said. We shouldn't be fighting for having these products, something that's natural, something that we can't really, prohibit, right, from happening. So that's my answer.
I think both of you kind of captured it perfectly. But just to add to that, I would say a world where there is complete accessibility. I mean, that would be the dream: accessibility to products, to education, um, everything a menstruating person could possibly need to develop a positive experience with their body, with their cycle, and with the people around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all the work that everyone on this webinar is doing is to ensure that we achieve that future. May not be in our lifetimes, but it's definitely the groundwork to achieving that moving forward. So thank you all so much for being a part of this discussion, for being a part of this series, and for the work that you do. It's quite meaningful, and I don't think that we and even the country and those who are impacted can thank you enough. Thank you for your time, thank you for your knowledge, and thank you for all of your efforts. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and I hope that you have a great week and a great time moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was a really excellent discussion, and I learned a lot.
Yeah, thanks everybody.